This Maamar was said on Tuesday, Purim Katan, Tafshin Lamed Ches, 5/7/38, 1978. It's interesting that the idea of Purim Katan, on one hand, as we'll explain, has a very strong historical background. On the other hand, there wasn't many years where there was something special for Purim Katan. We find from the edited Maamar from the Rebbe only very few that come from Purim Katan. The historical background of Purim Katan, first of all, in simple meaning, the idea of Purim Katan is, as we know, when there's an Iber year, when there's a leap year, there's two Adars. And even though the first Adar we don't celebrate Purim, but in Shulchan Aruch it still says that we don't say Tachnun, both Yudalid, the 14th of Adar Rishon, and the 15th. And we make a little bit of a Yom Tiv, and it's regarding this that the Ramah writes, Teiv Leiv Mishte Tamid, it's the last Ramah in Erechaim, that someone with a good heart is always happy, and that therefore it's proper to make it a little bit of a holiday, to celebrate a little bit with additional eating and drinking, etc. Purim Katan in the Hasidic history, in the year Taf Reish Pei Zayin, 1927, it was a time when the communists in Russia were closing in very strongly on the Previous Rebbe. It was already 7 years of the Previous Rebbe's leadership, in which he had made an entire network of teachers, of shluchim, who were sent out to make shuls and mikvehs, etc., throughout the entire length and breadth of the Soviet Union. We're talking about a person, one single-handedly fought against the entire powerful Russian Empire. And the Russians were seeing that he's succeeding and that he's winning over them. And this was really bothering them. And so they were closing in. In fact, from a letter from that time, one of the Jews who was close to the Previous Rebbe but also had government ties writes two stories. One story was in the far areas in Russia, in Georgia. There suddenly came a young man who's, you can tell that he's coming from, he's not a local, but yet he spoke the language perfectly, the language that they speak in Georgia, the dialect or the language that they speak there. And he came and he started giving speeches, amazing, powerful speeches. And in the speeches he praised the Russian government, the communist constitution that allows religion and that allows us, even if with certain limitations, but allows one to keep and to do and to follow religion. The local communist party over there were sure that he was sent by the center from Moscow, by the head office of the communists from Moscow. And so they listened to the things he was saying, and they paid on their own to fix the mikveh, to fix the shul. Later on, they found out this was a shliach from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And so also they saw in other places in Russia where people came and brought back Yiddishkeit in a way that even the communists themselves were helping it happen. And this really bothered them. And they decided that's it, they have to take the Previous Rebbe and they started following him. They started sending people to follow him wherever he went, etc. It was during that time that there was a plan to make a Farbrengen in the Lubavitcher Shul in Moscow. There was a Lubavitcher shul, and there was going to be a Farbrengen where the Frierdiker Rebbe was going to speak. The Frierdiker Rebbes, those who were close to the Frierdiker Rebbe, who had government connections, warned the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they said, please don't do it. Cancel this Farbrengen because they're on your heels, and it could be very dangerous. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't listen. He said, a Farbrengen is a Farbrengen. He made a Farbrengen which was full from wall to wall. The entire shul was full to the extent that there was no room inside the shul for all the people. There was a lot of people outside listening from outside. A lot of the people that were there were students. That was one of the worst sins for the communist university students, that they should come hear such a thing. And a lot of them were also people who had ties and had very high positions in the Communist Party. The Frierdiker Rebbe went up on the bima and he said the Maamar Vekibel Hayehudim. And in that Maamar, the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about how Mordechai Yehudi was the Moshe of his generation. And he gathered 22,000 Jewish children and he taught them Torah with Mesiras Nefesh. He had Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. And he, in this way, brought in, and the Frierdiker Rebbe described how Haman, the main decree of Haman was against the education of Jewish children. And Mordechai Yehudi went and gathered Jewish children to teach them Torah, and it was with this that he won over the enemy of the Jewish people, Haman HaRasha. And the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about that this is how it is in every single generation. Now it's obvious what he was talking about. This was the same thing in communist Russia. Their main issue was against Jewish education. It was this Maamar that, according to, in the natural way, was what caused, eventually, a few months later, the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe. This Maamar was for the Rebbe an extremely precious Maamar, and if we want to explain it, not only because of its historic meaning, but because to the Rebbe it meant something for our time when we don't have to have the same type of Mesiras Nefesh, but when we have to have our type of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice for Jewish education, for strengthening Jewish education amongst the children, which the Rebbe sees that as in all times, including in our very time now, as the most important thing for which we have to actually have Mesiras Nefesh. And therefore the Rebbe took the Maamar and used it often not just for its historical meaning, but more than that, for its practical meaning in our very times. In the first year of the Rebbe's leadership, Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951, shortly after the Rebbe accepted the leadership on Yud Shvat, one of the first Maamarim that the Rebbe gave out after Yud Shvat was for Purim, and the Maamar was Vekibel Hayehudim, that Maamar that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in 1927. The Rebbe himself then also said a Maamar on that Purim based on the Maamar of the previous Rebbe. It was also a leap year, but the Rebbe gave it out not for Purim Katan, not for the first Adar, but for the second Adar. The Maamar that the Rebbe said then was edited by the Rebbe in 1989 in Tafshin Mem Tes. The second time that the Rebbe said a Maamar which was edited by the Rebbe on this Maamar was in Tafshin Lamed Ches, 1978. And we know the importance that year was shortly after the Rebbe's heart attack. The Rebbe was saying often from his room, this was a Farbrengen where the Rebbe said a Maamar and a Sicha. And the Maamar was Vekibel Hayehudim, also based on this Maamar. It wasn't on Purim itself, but on Purim Katan. Right after, shortly after the Rebbe said it, the Rebbe edited the Maamar, and the Sicha also was edited in Likutei Sichos. And the third time that there's a Maamar from the Rebbe based on this Maamar, which was edited by the Rebbe, was also for Purim Katan. The Rebbe said it in Tafshin Mem Aleph, 1981, on Purim Katan, Ve'ata Tetzaveh, and the Rebbe edited in Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992, was the last Maamar till now that we got from the Rebbe, which the Rebbe edited for Purim Katan that year, was also a leap year. and that the Rebbe gave it out to every single person, men, women, and children, together with $2 bills and a piece of lekach, a piece of honey cake. So we see the importance of this Maamar. This is one of the three that were edited by the Rebbe in Tafshin Lamed Ches that we're going to learn now, that was for Purim Katan. So the Maamar begins, Vekibel Hayehudim es asher echelu lasos. In the Megillah it says, the Jewish people accepted on Purim this that they began to do. Maamar Hayadua, the previous Rebbe, the leader of our generation, explains in his famous Maamar Shamare be Purim Katan Tafresh Pezayin be Moscow, which he said on Purim Katan 1927 in Moscow. He explains in the Maamar, and the Rebbe adds here in parentheses, in brackets, this year, Tafshin Lamed Ches, 1978, is the beginning of the second Yovel, which means Tafshin Lamed Zayin is 50 years from when the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Maamar Vekibel Hayehudim, and therefore Tafshin Lamed Ches is the beginning of the second Yovel. It's interesting also that in the Sikha the Rebbe explains at length the importance of a Yovel. Yovel is 50 years, and the Torah calls it Ad Olam, forever. That means a Yovel is a length of time which is considered to be forever. When we start a new Yovel, it's starting a new world. It's a time when a person has to think and realize that it's like a new world that he's coming to now. And so therefore it's a time to contemplate the greatness of what has been said and what's explained in the Maamar. What did the previous Rebbe say in his Maamar? The Atab is Managolus im Kiblu Ma'asheichelu Kvar Bazman de Matan Torah. That now, during the time of Galus, during the time of Achashverosh, which was a time when the Jewish people were in Galus, in exile, and at this time they accepted this, that they had begun already in the time of Matan Torah. Maamar Ramzal, and like the sages tell us al pasuk, Kimu v'kiblu Hayehudim v'chulu. The pasuk says, Kimu v'kiblu Hayehudim, the Jewish people sustained and accepted. And the Gemara says in Shabbos, the Kimu ata b'mei Achashverosh, ma shekiblu kvar bizman de Matan Torah, that now in the time of Achashverosh, at the time of the terrible decrees of this time, they accepted this, that they gave sustenance, they sustained, they made it become strong, this that they already accepted at the time of Matan Torah. The previous Rebbe in the Maamar asks a question, that seemingly this is a wondrous thing. And the Rebbe now adds that we don't only say the word, there's a question or we have to understand, but rather that it's a wondrous thing, meaning it is so far from our understanding, this concept. What's far from our understanding? Before we see it inside, let's see the idea. Imagine at the time of Matan Torah was the high time of history. It was the highest time physically, spiritually. There was no other time ever, and there never will be another time in which Jews are on the same level as getting the Torah, because the Torah was given once and only once. And yet then, at this great time of Jewish history, they only began the receiving of the Torah. And then when it comes the time of Achashverosh, one of the lowest times of Jewish history, a time when the Jews were assimilated, a time when we find that after the Jewish people came back to Eretz Yisrael, after this Galus, most of them didn't even know how to speak Lashon Kodesh. They didn't even speak the Jewish language. Many of the people then were married to non-Jewish women. They forgot the basic laws of Shabbos. They forgot the basics of Judaism. And here is the time when they fully accepted the Torah, that in the time of in the time of Matan Torah was only the beginning. And the truth is, this question isn't just a question on that time. It's a general question on the whole idea of receiving the Torah. When can a person receive the Torah better? Seemingly, the time for receiving the Torah is on a time of high. We know in our lives we have sometimes a time of low. We know in the general history, we look at our own very time now, we look at our time in history, the world is in the darkest type of situation. Immorality is the name of the game. Torah and mitzvahs, who even connects to it properly despite all the greatness that we have in it? But we look at the world compared to great times that used to exist in our history. What's Torah and mitzvahs today? Are we going to be able to accept the Torah? And the question is about Mashiach. Can we say that now is when we're going to receive Mashiach? And the Rebbe is explaining this idea that in the Maamar, the Vekibel Rebbe, the question is, it's a davar nifla, meaning it's not just a question, it's not just something that we must understand, it's something which is amazing, it's nifla, it's a wonder. And here the Rebbe explains the following. Umidayik bazeh ba'Maamar, umidayik b'sheilasei. The previous Rebbe in his question specifies, Shezeu inyan nifla, this is something which is a wonder. Like lashon haragil b'roiv ha'maamarim, tzarich lahavin. Not like it usually says in a Maamar, when there's a question, we must understand. Rather, it says it's a wonder. Ki ha'inyan, tikiblu bizman ha'galus, ma sheichelu bizman matan Torah. The fact that at the time of Galus, the Jewish people were able to receive this that they only begun in the time of the giving of the Torah, b'vchinas nifla, it's the idea which is called nifla. What does nifla mean? Which means the idea of it is totally beyond understanding. We'll explain what nifla means. The Torah says that this Torah is not a wonder for you and it's not distant. And in Chassidus it explains, when it says the Torah is not distant, distance and closeness are things which are in comparison with each other. There are things which there is some type of comparison from one to the other. Aval nifla, moire, al inyan shel hafla ve'avdala v'achu b'vchinas pela legabe. Nifla shows on something which is totally separate. It's called a wonder. It's something which is totally and completely incomparable, not able to be connected to the reality. For an example, and we'll see in a minute how the Maamar explains it in the idea of Sfiris, but an example in a person, we know that in Chassidus there's explained that in a person's soul there's three parts of the soul which are nefesh, ruach, neshama. Those are called the koiches pnimim, the inner powers of the soul. Nefesh is the part of the soul that connects to practical action. Ruach is the spirit which connects more to emotions, and neshama to intellect. But all of them are what we call koiches pnimim because they're inner aspects of the soul which connect to things which which connects to the person's actual life and practical life in this world. Then there's chaya and yechida. Chaya and yechida are levels of the soul that are above the person. It's like the motor of the soul, the sustenance of the soul. It's the essence of the soul, which is called makif because it surrounds. It's not the inner essence. It's not the inner aspect of the soul. It's the essence of the soul itself. Chaya connects still somewhat to the inner powers of the soul, which means it affects them. Yechida is the essence which is one with Hashem. It's beyond, it can't even be called something that connects to that it somehow sustains the soul. And in the same thing, there's richuk. Richuk is something that's far away. Far away means it's not close, but it has a connection to being close. Pele means it's a wonder, it's beyond understanding. And the Rebbe continues to explain how this is in Sfiris. The level of Pele, wonder, is the level of Keser. Keser literally means the crown, which means the essence of godliness, which is above intellect and emotions. It's above the 10 Sfiris. Keser is something which is surrounds, it's above, it's beyond the actual practical spheres, and like we said in the soul, ideas like nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Ubefratius, specifically, it's bechinas pnimius hakeser, the inner level of keser, shezeu be'ein arech legamri l'chol seder ishtalshus, because in keser itself, there's also chitzonius of keser, the outer level of keser, which still connects, even if in a removed manner, but it still connects somehow to the inner spheres. But then there's Pnimius HaKeser, that's the very essence itself, which is beyond connecting to anything else. It's Be'ein Arech Legamri, it's totally incomparable to the Chol Seder Ishtalshalos. Zayuvan Gam Benegelin in Anifla Muva by Maamar. Says the Rebbe, and the Rebbe ends off now here, these brackets, with an interesting idea. Now we can understand also what it means when it says in the Maamar Nifla. Nifla means the idea that it's possible to be able to fully receive the Torah in a time when we're totally removed from anything to do with Torah. While when we received the Torah by Matan Torah, that was only the beginning, or that was only the Torah which wasn't properly sustained. That's something which is so beyond intellect. But what is it? It's something which is an essential concept, which that's what we're going to explain in the Maamar. It's something which it doesn't come in intellect. It doesn't make any sense. But essentially, it's not just that that's the question. That's also going to be the explanation, that it's something which reaches the depth and the essence of the soul. And that's what we continue to say. The Matan Torah, at the time of the giving of the Torah, Kasher Echelu Laseis, when they only began to do the idea of giving the Torah. At that time, the Jewish people were in the ultimate greatness. They were in a very high state. And at that time, it was after the splitting of Yamsuf and going out of Mitzrayim. Shehem minyanim, the ideas of Kriyas Yamsuf, of the splitting of Yamsuf, and of leaving Egypt, they were concepts, v'sabena vekishtelt, as kol echad v'achas misral, that they set every single Jew, v'sklalus am Yisrael, and the Jewish people as a whole, b'maymed naile b'yeser, in the highest state of being. The B'yitzias Mitzrayim nigla leyem melech malchi amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chveidu v'atzmei galam. At the time when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, Himself, Hashem Himself, which in Chassidus it explains the idea of b'chveidu and b'atzmei, that means the very essence of Hashem was revealed to every single Jew in order to redeem them. Uvishas Kriyas Yamsuf, and at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf, Shuasiyim v'chaysam Yitzias Mitzrayim, which is the completion of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Ras Shifcha Layam Ashalei Nevim. The maidservant was able to see on Yamsuf what even the greatest of prophets didn't see. V'alachas Kama v'Kama, much more so after they left Mitzrayim. After they went through Yamsuf, they saw godliness in the most revealed way. Even more than that, when they reached, as a continuation to leaving Mitzrayim and to going through the Yamsuf, when they reached the level of being able to see godliness in the greatest manner at the time of the giving of the Torah. The Matan Torah hayarak pa'amachas. Matan Torah was a one-time thing. V'chayaduan, as it's known, shematan Torah li'yayda pam, the giving of the Torah will never happen again. It happened once and that's it, which means it was a one-time concept of history where the Jews reached the highest possible level. V'gam bevur b'Tanya. It's also explained in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains, Shebishas matan Torah kvar haya me'ein tachlis shleimus ha'olam she'el asid lavi. That essentially at the time of the giving of the Torah, the world already reached a level which was similar to the greatest complete level that will be in the time of Mashiach. Shehaya gilui elokos b'riyah chushis. They were able to have the revelation of godliness in a manner that they were able to see Hashem. Shemitzad gilui meilu ha'yisrael b'tachlis ha'mayla. Because of these great revelations of going out of Mitzrayim, going through Yamsuf, and all of this coming to its culmination at the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people were on the highest possible level in the concept of revelation of godliness. Mashenken, on the other hand, Bizman HaGalus, at the time of Galus, at the time of the exile, in general, the whole idea of exile is the total opposite of this. In general, exile is a time when the Jewish people are on the lowest low, because godliness is concealed. And specifically in this specific Galus, in the time of Haman, Vekibel Hayehudim kimu gomer. The time of Haman, which that's the time when the Jews fully accepted and received the Torah, when they actually sustained this that they only begun in the time of the giving of the Torah. And at that time, what was happening? Shebikesh chas v'shalem lahashmid laharoig ulahabed eskol Hayehudim, that Haman wished, God forbid, to destroy, to annihilate, to kill all of the Jewish people, minar v'adzakin, from young to old, taf v'nashim, children and women, b'yoyim echad gomer, on one specific day. The gzeira zu sakasha b'yeser. This decree of Haman was a very tough decree. Shari hoysa b'bas achas al kol Hayehudim shebechol ha'olam, because this decree was one that was in one single time a decree against all of the entire Jewish people in the entire world. Achashverosh ruled over the entire civilized world at the time, as the Medrash says. There was no ability to run away, to escape to a place that the decree wasn't happening at that time. Kivan Shaisa b'yoyim echad b'chol ha'olam was on one single day in the entire world. Shezeu b'galus gufa galus achineira, and galus itself, that's the most terrible exile, one where there was a decree to destroy the entire Jewish people in a time that no one was able to run away. The question is one which is regarding that specific time, the time of Haman. Here we're talking about the highest of high, and here we're talking about the lowest of low. It's a question which refers also to the time of the previous Rebbe when he said the Maamar, and it refers to our time in Galus, when the Galus we seem to be at the lowest of low. How is it then possible that we should be able at this time to actually do what we weren't able to do in the highest time? To try and understand a little bit more this idea of what we call nifla and the specific of the concept of this question. There's a story that there once came a certain Rebbe, a good Yid. He came into the Rebbe in Yechidus. And the Rebbe said to him, I want to share with you a question that someone asked me from Russia, at that time, communist Russia. And the Rebbe said, this person, in Russia at that time, everyone had to work. And if you didn't work, you were sent to Siberia. And in order to work, you had to officially work on Shabbos as well. This chassid who was asking the question, he arranged that he should have a job, like many of chassidim at that time, a job where he doesn't really have to desecrate Shabbos, where he can walk to work. Sometimes they would have to walk for hours. He can walk to work and he can get out of doing anything which is chilul Shabbos. Not to do that would have been putting one's own life in their hand. Not only you don't have food, but you get sent to Siberia. And so this chassid wrote to the Rebbe a question. And he said, even though I know that I'm not desecrating Shabbos, but to the eyes of people, bifar hesya, the way it seems to the public, it looks like I'm desecrating Shabbos. So that means that essentially I'm a mechalel Shabbos bifar hesya. Not that I'm actually desecrating Shabbos, but bifar hesya, for the people, for the world, it seems like I'm desecrating Shabbos. And so he asked the Rebbe, when I make Kiddush on Friday night, is it better perhaps that I shouldn't make on wine? Because my wine is going to be ayin nesech. Because bifar hesya, publicly I'm desecrating Shabbos. The Guter Yid, the Rav, or the Rebbe that was by the Rebbe in Yechidus, he asked the Rebbe, so what did you answer? So the Rebbe said, actually I didn't send an answer. It was Mesirus Nefesh for the person to send the letter in the first place. For him to get a letter from me about this is again putting him in danger. And I'm sure he'll find someone there to ask him to find the answer. The issue isn't what's the answer, the issue is this question. When we say something is nifla, it makes no sense. Making no sense means there's sometimes things that they don't even come and they can't even be understood intellectually. The idea of Mesirus Nefesh, that a Jew should be able to have such a state and a level of Mesirus Nefesh, to the extent that he feels that I don't know if I should make Kiddush on my wine or not. That a person should come to such a state is not something that can be explained. And that is the question which is being asked here. It's a question that it's not just a question. It's something which is deeper than a question. It's something which is nifla. It's something which in the very essence makes no sense. Which means there's a time when godliness is revealed. When spiritually and physically we're on a level. When the Jewish people see godliness. They go out of Mitzrayim, they see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Melech Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of all kings, B'chvayde U'v'atzmein, they saw it, they saw the revelation, they saw the level of godliness that took them out of Egypt. They saw it, they felt it, they recognized it, they appreciated it. They went through the Yam Suf, even a maidservant was able to see and point with the finger and say, Zeh Keli, I see it, this is God. They were able to see and perceive the level of godliness that caused this Kriyas Yam Suf, and where the sea was open, meaning the hidden world was open and revealed. They came to the giving of the Torah, they saw Hashem Vayechsu, as Alikei Yisrael, they saw God. To the extent that it was similar to what will be in the time of Mashiach. There's revelation. People are on a highest possible level. They're connected. Such as there was in many times in our history. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash. In a certain manner in the time of the Tanaim. In the time of the Amiraim. And in certain ways in the time of the Baal Shem Tov. In the time of the Alter Rebbe. And perhaps in certain times in not even so far history. Not so distant history. When the whole Jewish people were keeping Torah, learned Torah, knew Torah, appreciated Torah, felt godliness. You saw a Jew, you saw a chassid, someone who was able to appreciate godliness. And then there's a different time, a time of Achashverosh, a time when godliness is hidden, a time when a person doesn't even have the ability to learn Torah and do mitzvahs even if he wants to. A time when the Jewish people are on the lowest of low, when a Jew's life is worthless. Both spiritually and physically. The low is, there's nothing lower than that. The time that the previous Rebbe said the Maamar, a time when the people were not able to, even if they wanted, they weren't able to keep many of the mitzvahs. Because they just couldn't, it wasn't available. A time when to be a Jew, to walk on the street in a revealed way as a Jew was something you couldn't do. And a time like our time, when even if physically we don't have the same level and the same idea of Mesirus Nefesh, of the decree, but the decrees now are coming from the immorality of the world, from a world of darkness, a world where there's the maligim, those who mock as soon as a person opens his mouth and talks about something spiritual and holy and godly and even something moral that maybe years ago any person, even Lahavdil Agai, would accept, and today it's totally unacceptable to even speak about it. A time like this, is this when we can fully accept what we couldn't accept in the time when everything was revealed? That's nifla. That's something which it doesn't make sense. It can't even get an answer. But the answer is something deeper, and that's what we'll learn. The answer is in the question itself. It's not something that can even begin to be explained. It's something that's beyond reason, beyond understanding. It's not just we have to understand it. It's not just a question. It's nifla. It's totally removed from any level of understanding. How it's possible that it's now that everything becomes completed. That it's now that we'll see Mashiach. It's now that we can complete that which in the time of Matan Torah was only the beginning. And that in itself is really the beginning of the answer, because it's not a question, it's not an answer. It's something which is removed from our understanding, and it continues. The answer itself is in this very fact that it's removed from understanding. And what's the answer? Maamar, the previous Rebbe explains in the Maamar. He's continuing to explain in the Maamar something which is a continuation to the question, but which in essence is the question is also the answer. And this in itself is also the continuation of the question and what's explaining exactly how this is something that takes place not only in the time of Achashverosh, in the time that the previous Rebbe said the Maamar, but in our very time in the same exact way. The power of the decree and the galus, the exile in the spiritual sense, where was the most powerful expression of this decree, of this galus, was the decree regarding the concept of education. And as the Medrash tells us, Amar Haman said, Ein ani sheleach yadi tchila, ela bi'elu atinekes. The way I'm going to destroy, God forbid, the Jewish people, I'm going to start with these children, v'hainu, which means the vichdei lahafik chas v'shalom zmamai machshav tehara asher chashav ala Yehudim rachman litzlan la'abdam. In order for Haman to, God forbid, fulfill his wishes, fulfill his evil plans that he had against the Jewish people, God forbid, to destroy the Jewish people, the way to destroy the Jewish people, the ones whom to start with, is these children. That means the decree against the general idea of Jewish education. This was the understanding of Haman. Haman understood and realized the way to go against the Jewish people is by fighting against Jewish education. The communists understood and realized They didn't have an issue if an older person will go to shul. They didn't have an issue if a person will put on tefillin every day. And to a certain extent, they didn't have an issue with many of the other mitzvahs as long as an older person does it. Their big issue was Jewish education. Don't teach the children about Hashem, because they knew that that's the only way that Judaism will continue. The same thing that there is in today's world. In today's world, nobody minds if an older person can be religious and fanatic and fundamentalist, as they call it. But don't educate a child in this manner. Don't pass it on. When it comes to education, you have to be open-minded. When it comes to education, you have to be more accepting. And you can't teach them Yiddishkeit the way it is, exactly the way it is. V'yishleimar, says the Rebbe, she'af she'bahanal tineke shel beis rabban ka yal tinek b'shanim, that despite the fact that with regards to this, and the main concept of Jewish children means children in years, in age, avol me'ein zehu gam b'tinek b'inyanei yadus, this also applies to a child with regards to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism. Hagam shu ish gadol b'shanim, even if he's already an older person in years, meaning he's already uvelashin kvei tushas meidi v'chami yadmer, like the previous Rebbe once expressed himself at Hachin Vaisahar. He's a person who already has white hair. Mikol makim b'matzavi b'inyani teiro mitzvahs u'b'inchinas tinek. With regards to his state in Torah and mitzvahs, he's a child. Education is not only children. The main place is in actual children, but it refers to anyone who needs to be educated. That the Gzeira, the decree, is against educating people who need to be educated. From this fact itself, that the existence of the Jewish people depends on Jewish education. Move on Gedel HaMesirus Nefesh Tzarich Liyisal Chinuch B'nei Yisrael. From this very fact, we also understand how much Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice, we must have. Not just in the time of Achashverosh, not just in the time that the previous Rebbe said in the Maamar, and not just in Tafshin Lamed Ches in 1978 when the Rebbe said the Maamar, but in all times, it's Jewish education, which is the backbone of the Jewish people, and therefore when it comes to educating children and educating any Jew, we must know that we must have shetzarich limser nafshe. One must give his life bichdei sheyiyah al tigu b'mshichai, in order that there should be, do not touch my Mashiach, which refers, as the Gemara says, Elu tineke shel beis rabban. This refers to the Jewish children, Kedisum and Masechta Shabbos. Hasher zer naseh, how do we have this Mesirus Nefesh? That one shouldn't touch the education, meaning not to compromise in any way whatsoever the education of Jewish children. This happens al yedei through the fact shemachnisim es atinoikos el mekaimam haroi, that we bring in the children to their proper place, El Beis Rabban, to their teacher's home, Visham Gufa, and over there, Oifen HaChinuch, how do we educate them? Uboifen Shel Beis Rabban, Vikeva, that they're in the house. It's a set place of their teacher. Hainu, meaning, Shatinoikos Yikablu Mirabban, that the children receive from their teachers, Hayisoid, dem ganzen Shtel al Kol Yimei Chayim, they receive the foundation and the whole shtel, the whole stand, and the whole outlook for their entire life. This is the reality of what the Jewish people depends on. Jewish education. Jewish education was what our Rabbeim were Meiser Nefesh for. All the years, starting from the Baal Shem Tov and through till the Friedrich Rebbe in his time in 1927, and before that, and the stories that he told about the Rebbe Rashab and the other Rabbeim, that any time anyone wanted to make the slightest change In Jewish education, they stood with literal self-sacrifice. They put their lives in danger for it. That the Rebbe, throughout all the years, from the beginning of the Rebbe's leadership till this very day, sets us the way that one must educate children without any compromises whatsoever. And yet, at that time, there was a decree against it. At that time, Jewish education was in danger. That time. In the time when the previous Rebbe said the Maamar. In our time. And the question is, if that's the case, v'achar kol zeh, despite all this, the time of the giving of the Torah, when Judaism was on the highest level, when godliness was revealed in the most powerful manner, when everything was good and strong, Jewish education, you had Moshe Rabbeinu, you had Aaron HaKohen, you had all the teachers of Jewish people, there's no one stopping them. They were in the desert where there was nothing standing in the way. And yet there, they couldn't be receiving the Torah. And when Jewish education was in danger, that's when there was the full receiving of the Torah. Inyan shel haschala bilvad v'kiyum da Torah d'matan Torah. When was the Torah sustained? Kimu v'kiblu. When did they actually fully receive the Torah? Yadavka bizman hagolus was specifically in the time of exile when godliness is hidden, and not just a general time of exile, but ufrat bizman Haman, specifically in the time of Haman. When the Jewish people were in the lowest state of exile, both physically and spiritually, this is something which isn't just we have to understand. It's not just a question. It's something which is beyond the ability to understand it in our intellectual mind. What is the explanation? What is this thing which is an essential concept which can't be understood? It's beyond understanding. Yet what is that? What is that thing which is beyond understanding? So the Rebbe explains in Ois Beis v'Yuvon Zeh K'mevur Ba'Maamar. This can be understood as the previous Rebbe explains in his Maamar. Al pi abir remasha kasov, based on what it says in the pasuk in the parsha of Tetzaveh, shemen goimer kosis lamoir, oil which is crushed for the luminary. That when Hashem told Aaron HaKohen to light the menorah on the Beis HaMikdash, he said to use oil, kosis, which is crushed, lamoir, in order to be the luminary that shines in the menorah. Shemedayik sham, and the previous Rebbe says the following question: Shalinem shemen lahoir. It doesn't say in the pasuk that it's oil in order to shine. Kim shemen goimer lamoir. It's oil that reaches the luminary, the source of light. Seemingly, it should say this is oil in order to shine in the menorah. Umevair was, and the previous Rebbe explains the moir koya lamoir atzmai hainu moir ha'ir. Ma'ir means the source of light. And interesting, as we said before, what was the question? The time of Matan Torah was a time of revelation, of light. The time of Galus is a time of darkness where there's a lack of light. The question itself, we said, is nifla. It's not intellectually understood. It's in a wondrous manner. It can't be brought down into light. Where does it reach? The source of light. What's the source of light? This is why it says crushed for the luminary. When a person is in the level of kasis, which means shenish bar v'nidka, he is broken and crushed. When the person himself in his avodah, in his state of being, in his life, he's not in a manner of revelation, of feeling. He's a manner of totally feeling crushed. He feels like he's lacking. That's how he can reach not the light, because it's not light. It's the opposite of light. That's where he reaches the source of light. What causes the person to be broken and crushed? It's not that he's lacking anything physically, like it was in the time of Achashverosh, that they were lacking physically. In the time of the previous Rebbe, they were lacking physically. But in our time, we're in a state where we're not lacking anything physically. On the contrary, in the physical manner, we're in the greatest, broadest way. We have whatever we need. We have shuls and hot mikvahs and air conditioning and money, and the government even pays for you to learn Torah and to have a school. Physically, we have what we need. No one's stopping us. No one's standing over us and stopping us from learning Torah. Despite the fact that physically we're in the greatest manner of abundance. But yet, spiritually, there's a lack in the person's divine service, in the way he serves Hashem. And the Rebbe goes on even further. Even if the person is spiritually complete, he learns Torah, he does all the mitzvahs properly. To the extent that he's in the greatest and highest level and the greatest way of abundance. But he does everything he's supposed to. His avodah is serving Hashem is exactly the way it should be. Nevertheless, and when the person thinks about and contemplates, the person realizes, yes, in Giluyim I'm complete, in the light I'm complete, in my physical, material, spiritual, everything I'm doing, I'm the perfect person, I'm the beautiful person who does everything properly. But then I think about my essence, that in truth, who am I really? V'amich kulam tzadikim. I'm really a person about whom it said, your nation, the nation of Hashem, are all tzadikim. V'kol echad v'achas miYisrael, hu neitzer matoi ma'aseh yodai lihispoir. Every single Jew is considered to be neitzer matoi, the plant of Hashem's, the sprout of Hashem's planting. Ma'aseh yodai, the actions of Hashem's hand, lihispoir, which means we're matov, we're the plants, u'ma'aseh yodav, and the handiwork shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Hashem, v'shebohem hu mispoir, in which Hashem takes pride. Who am I? It's not enough I'm complete. What am I really? I am the one in whom Hashem takes personal pride. And then I think, I contemplate deeply the greatness of Hashem. When the person realizes that I am the one whom Hashem takes pride in, and I realize what it means, Hashem, who takes pride in me, then he'll cry out in the bitterness of his soul. What is all my work worth, even if it's complete? If I'll compare it to amiti, to my true worth and my true level, that I really should be the one who is the plant, the sprout which is planted by Hashem, the handiwork of Hashem, when Hashem takes pride in, Bigali, in a revealed way, I should really be in this manner till to the state that everybody who sees me should be able to recognize this. And if that's the case, then even when I do worship Hashem in the most complete way, it's still not the way it should be. Even one who makes a small signal with his hand in front of the king, that causes, the Gemara says that then he's chayav misa, he deserves to be killed, because that's the opposite of his life and his existence, because I'm in front of the king. And certainly when the person's avodah is not the way it should be, the powers that I was given, the Maisa Yadai Lishpar, that I was given powers to be the one in whom Hashem takes pride, and based on that, my divine service is not at all the way it should be. You know the famous story that there was a chassid, Rabbi Paritcher. Rabbi Paritcher always wanted to see the Alter Rebbe. And he would go from one place to the other, and every time he went somewhere and the Alter Rebbe had just left, it seemed like from above, it wasn't meant to be that he should meet the Alter Rebbe. One time, finally, he came, and he found out where the Alter Rebbe would be, and he went and he hid in the closet. And the way it used to be then was that the Chassidim, when they were preparing to meet the Rebbe, they would prepare a question in learning. So he prepared a question in the Masechta Erchin. Masechta Erchin is a very tough Masechta which talks the complicated matters of evaluating how much if a person says Erki Allah, he says the worth of this person, of himself, and how much he gives to the Beis HaMikdash, etc. And he prepared a question in it. He was hiding in the closet, and as soon as the Alter Rebbe came into the room, the Rebbe said with a niggin, as the Alter Rebbe always spoke with a niggin. A young man that wants to learn Erchin, first he has to evaluate himself. Rabbi Paritcher heard this, he fainted, and by the time he came to, the Alter Rebbe was already gone. This idea is not just a Rabbi Paritcher idea. Every single one of us, if we think about how we should evaluate ourselves based on who we really are, I am the handiwork of Hashem. I am the tree, the sprout which is planted by Hashem himself. The one in whom Hashem takes personal pride. What am I doing? Am I really working based on that amount? So when a person realizes this, Vihine, when the person contemplates the great, awesome descent that his neshama has compared to what it really is based on how much he's serving Hashem and what he should be doing, and he cries out in the bitterness of his soul, that will bring him to tshuva. Tshuva means to return to Hashem, to the extent that he'll reach the level of what the pasuk says, the spirit, which is the neshama, shall return to the God who gave it into his soul, which means return to his very essence from where he came. And even higher than this, shetashuva nefesh b'mesirus nefesh limekayra v'shar shoha elyein shemimena luchachula, which means that the soul will return through its mesirus nefesh, through its feeling of self-sacrifice, to its original source from whence it was taken. V'zeu mashe kasuv lamoyer, and this is the meaning of the pasuk, crushed to the luminary. Shalidei zeh she'adam nishbar v'nitka b'vchinas kasis, through the fact that the person is broken and crushed in a manner of kasis. Mitei charchava bigashes, mitei charchava beruchnis kanal. And again, the Rebbe emphasizes that both physically and spiritually there's a state of abundance, but yet he's crushed from the fact that it's not the way it should be. Then he reaches the source and the root itself, which is the level of Elikim Asher Nesana. Which means that, again, in the idea that we said, light there isn't. It doesn't make sense in light that the person should be able to do this. In revelation, it doesn't make sense. But in the level where there's no revelation, in the level of being crushed, in the level of tshuva, in the level of realizing that I don't feel, I don't have, and that causes the person to connect to the source of light, to the source from whence he came, and that's the idea of what we're talking about. That is the nifla, the thing which makes no sense, but where the person is connecting with Mesirus Nefesh to the very essence of Hashem, the source of the light.